So this morning we're going to be talking about the doorway to life. And the interesting thing about the doorway to life is it's very different than what we might think. All of us are looking for life. I mean, we want to feel life like every day. And if you felt life yesterday, that's great. It's not enough for today. You want to feel life today. Where do we find that? Well, one of the things that we can find ourselves looking for constantly and thinking that that's where life is in pleasure. And pleasure is good. Pleasure is not bad. God gave us pleasure, and it's a gift from God and all of those things. But there is something else in life that God has given us that is actually meant to direct us towards life. And if we don't understand it, we will constantly run from it and think that it's just bad and we need to stay away from it. And if we do that, what we actually do is we avoid the doorway to life. Now, Jesus said that He is life. He says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. So we know that Jesus is life, but how do we find Jesus? Well, one of the ways that we find Jesus, and Jesus demonstrates this, and we're going to get into this, but it's actually through trials and suffering. Now, do not go looking for trials and suffering, okay? There have been people, like in the monastic tradition that, they like go looking for suffering. Like they want to make themselves suffer because that's going to bring them close to God. Don't do that, okay? You have no need to do that. You live in a world full of trials and suffering. You do not need to look for it. It will find you. And there are many things that we can do in our life to lessen the trials and suffering, and I absolutely suggest that you do that, okay? I suggest that you try to eat something besides, cookies every day, all day, because that's going to lead to some trials and suffering. Don't do that, okay? But with that in mind, though, here's the deal. Even with that, let's say that you eat great, you're kind to people, you read your Bible, you try to be a good person, you work hard at work, you're good to your family. Doesn't matter. You are going to encounter sufferings and trial. Now, part of the reason for that is that we live in a cursed world, but here's what I want you to understand. God could lessen it even more. He could. But He has a purpose behind it. And part of that purpose is that you would lean into it. And as you lean into it, what you're actually going to find is more life. One of the things I want to throw out to you this morning to think about that I hadn't thought about fully, but I began thinking about it in children's service last Sunday night. Our children's pastor, Rachel, said this to the kids. And I'm just in the background, right? But I heard it and it just echoed in my mind. I could tell God was saying something to me. So she said to the kids, why did Jesus have to go to the cross? Now, I've been to Bible college, seminary. I know all the theological reasons, okay? God's wrath, He had to die for our sins. That was the way that the Romans, would handle things back then. All of that. But what I hadn't really thought about is God could have changed it. God could have made an easier death for Jesus. Have you ever thought about that? He could have made a much easier death. First of all, this was the worst time in all of history that you could be killed because the Romans had perfected the art of making you suffer as long as you possibly could until you died. They could have just stabbed him, right? Slit his throat, beheaded him. That would have been sudden. And as a matter of fact, what the proper way would have been, because this is the way that God called for in the Old Testament law, and the proper way to have killed Jesus according to Jewish law would have been stoning. That's what they did to Jesus. Now, I don't want to die by stoning, but if you give me the choice between stoning and crucifixion, I'm choosing stoning every time. Why did God do it? Okay? Why did He do it? Well, I think there's many reasons, but I want to look at one this morning, okay? I want to focus in on one, and then I want to use that to show us the doorway to life. Because it was through that doorway that Jesus entered into the place that had been prepared for him. He entered into the purpose that he was to fulfill, and he was also giving us an example of how we could fulfill it as well. The scripture I'm going to look at this morning is Hebrews 5, verses 7 through 9. I want to look at that this morning because it's going to give us some insight into what God was doing. Hebrews 5, verses 7 through 9, I'm reading out of the New Living Translation, says this in verse 7, "While Jesus was here on earth, he offered prayers and pleadings with a loud cry and tears to the one who could rescue him from death." Now, I want to stop there before we read on. I want you to hear the humanity of Jesus in this. Because you could say to yourself, well, yeah, but Jesus was God, and so he had a special power, that he could endure crucifixion. No. He felt it the same way that you would. And he also felt emotionally all the things that you would feel. He felt the fear, the anxiety, I do not want to go through with this. And so he's crying out to the Father. And by the way, this is with the knowledge of what it's all going to bring about, where it's all going to end, and what the purpose of it is. But it was still so hard that he's crying out, and he's like, if you've read in the Gospels, God, if there's another way, let it be. But then he says, but if not, your will be done, not my will. But I want you to hear the humanity in this. Because I think that if you've lived any amount of time, maybe you haven't faced crucifixion, but you've probably been through something where you've cried out. I heard this statement in a podcast this week, and it described this perfectly. I've just never thought about this for some reason. But this person was talking about a guttural cry. Have you ever had a guttural cry? Like, I've had some where I'm upset and I'm whatever. I've had some guttural. Like, that's all I can say. Like, it's coming from my gut, and I'm like, God, why? I don't get it. I think that that's what Jesus is describing here. It's like, God, can we do something else? No matter what your path is, whether you follow Jesus or not, I don't think that you can avoid this. I think that as you live life, things are going to happen where inside of you there's this guttural reaction that says, God, why? Why? Well, I want to share with you this morning that God actually has a plan. Now, there's an enemy out there and he's doing all these things, but God is sovereign. And he wants to take these things and he wants to use them for good, and he actually wants to bring about life in you. And we're going to get there. Just stick with me. So the rest of verse 7 says, and God heard his prayers because of his deep reverence for God. So I want you to hear this. God was hearing the prayers of his Son. Absolutely was hearing the prayers of the Son. And there was no sin between the Son and the Father. He was absolutely hearing those prayers. He absolutely loved the Son with everything that was in him, but he was still not going to take away the suffering from the Son. He was going to give the Son the grace to endure the suffering, but he was not going to take it away. Why? Verse 8 says, even though Jesus was God's Son, he learned obedience from the things he suffered. Even though Jesus was God's Son, he learned obedience from the things he suffered. Now, what do we mean by obedience? Well, Jesus didn't sin, okay? That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about, I'm trying to teach Jesus to get his act together. No. Jesus didn't sin. But Jesus felt the temptations that you feel. He was fully man. That's what the scriptures declare. He was fully man, so he felt those temptations. And so the things in his body, even though he never gave into it, always wanted to go against God. Can anybody relate to that? Man, I can relate to that. I've shared this stuff before, but okay. So this morning, I spend time, like I get up at 5, okay, and I'm up and I'm spending time with the Lord. I'm going over the message and all that, and I'm getting ready to come up here and I'm going to pray in the sanctuary and so on. Like I am focused on God, and nobody is up to distract me. But I don't know why I didn't take care of this earlier. Like my truck is on fumes, like it's on E, and it's like, maybe I should stop in and get some gas, before I come up here. And it's still dark. There's not very many people there, so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna sneak in there. Well, as soon as I sneak in, I see this vehicle pull up beside me, and I know the person that's in that vehicle, and they're one of those people that they will come up and just start talking to you, and like you don't like participate in the conversation. They just like keep going from one thing to another to one, and I'm like, no, Lord, protect me. So what I do is I leave my door open and I don't shut it when I go to fuel up, thinking that'll block my view so they won't see me. Then I go back to fuel my truck up, and I don't know why, but I can't just, most of you can probably just, pull the lever and walk away. Like I can't. My stupid truck, I gotta like hold the thing up at a funky angle and hold my tongue the right way so it won't click off. And I'm really annoyed by that, and I'm just like, why is this like this? And then I gotta clean my windshield. It's awful. And I go over to get the windshield thing, and there's no water in it. I'm like, these people have been working here all night. What have they been doing? Fill up the windshield washer thing. And I just start getting into this place where I'm just like angry. You know what I'm saying? But then again, I'm supposed to preach the word this morning. So I need to be really focused on Jesus. But here's where I'm going with this, okay? Those are like mini trials that are like nothing that you encounter every day. But I have a choice in that moment. And my choice is this: to get frustrated that everything is not going my way, and that's the way my flesh is, okay? Or I can take that moment and say, whoa, you know what? I'm actually not focused on Jesus right now. I thought I was. I just spent all this time with him, I'm going to pray in the sanctuary. I thought I was all about Jesus. I wasn't. I'm still walking in the flesh. And all it took was a few little trials of things not going my way to open my eyes up. And so in that moment, I just stopped. And I was like, Jesus, I stop right now and I just focus on you. And it doesn't matter if there's no fluid in the whatever. It doesn't matter if, somebody comes and distracts me away from my plans. It doesn't matter if it takes some extra time to fuel up. You're in control of this day. I'm simply going to look to you, and I'm going to look to how you guide. I'm not going to be mad if everything doesn't go in order. Here's my whole point, and here's what I want you to hear. We don't realize how deeply entrenched our flesh is set against God and his control. Like even if you're like in your mind and in your spirit, I want to follow Jesus, you need to know this. Your flesh is dead set against it. Like even if you're in full-time ministry, your flesh is dead set against it. And it is going to take time and suffering and trials to break it. But that is the doorway to life. That's it. There's another verse in Scripture that says, if you suffer physical pain for sin, you are done with sin. Like if you will endure it, you're done with sin. Because you are purposely choosing God over the sin. One of the things that the Lord led me into about a year ago, and I've shared some of this with you, is I've started fasting one day a week for a little over a year now. And I have mixed feelings every time I enter into it because it's not fun. It's not fun to go without the pleasure of food and to feel hungry and weak. But here's what it's done for me. It's led me to a life that I was not experiencing before, because in my body, I am saying no to the pleasure that my body is craving, and I'm saying it's causing me to lean into Jesus. Because when I have food, I still need Jesus, but I can kind of float along through my day in a much easier way. Because I've got energy and, I've got the next meal. I don't even have to wait for the next meal. I got snacks in my desk drawer. Don't go looking in there, okay? But I've got snacks everywhere. Anybody else got snacks hidden around, like just in case, right? So I still need Jesus, but I got these snacks. But when I'm fasting, like my focus on Jesus is like hyper accentuated, because it's like, I need you, Lord. I need you to get me through this next hour, okay? Like I am like super focused. That is part of what the trials of life are meant to do for us. As the trials come, we have a choice. We can get mad that things aren't going our way, and we can try to manage, okay, and control everything. And if you do that, it's like trying to herd cats, okay? Like if you are in management and you manage people, it's like trying to herd cats, okay? No offense to anyone, I'm the same way if you try to manage me, okay? It's the way we are. We've all got our own plans and we're all going this way, and you will drive yourself nuts if you try to make the world go your way. Like there's people out there that preach, oh, this is how you can manipulate and guide people. Baloney! You will drive yourself nuts. But you can find life when you say, okay, Lord, I'm not in control. I release this to you, and I ask you to show me how you want me to respond and what you want me to take care of, what you want me to let go. And when you do that, what happens is you find this life because you're releasing all these things, you're putting them into God's control, and what happens is this fellowship. And by the way, fellowship with Jesus is where you really find life. It's not a head belief in Him. It's this deep fellowship with Him. I was listening to 2 podcasts this week, and both people would have called themselves Christians, but later they confessed it wasn't until their trials that they really experienced deep fellowship with Jesus. And even though like they wouldn't choose the trial and it was hard, like they would never want to give up what came through it. Let me give you the 2 examples because they're very different. One of them was a guy who was even a worship leader. Okay, he would lead worship. He's leading people. He's talking about the Lord, but the Lord thought that he wasn't fully connected. So one of the things that he allowed in his life is he had some chemical problems in his brain, and he was really given over to intense anxiety. He was diagnosed with, compulsive disorder, and he just emotionally had a hard time. He would go up, lead worship, and he said he would go out in his car and just cry because just the anxiety is tearing him up. And he's pleading to God, take this away and do this and so on. And God's not taking it away. But here's the thing. What he did was he began to really lean into Jesus, and Jesus began to lead him through how, when this stuff happened, he could lean into the Lord more. And so from that, God didn't take it all away. He didn't just heal him like that. But through it, what the man learned is how to lean in and have deeper fellowship with Jesus. And now he looks back and he's so grateful for it because he's experiencing life like he never did. The other person was a mother who lost her child, 3-year-old. And she was not someone who didn't take care of her child, but they had a pool at their house and they kept a gate around it. It's locked. You can't get to it. Somehow the kid gets in and drowns. And this mother is talking about those guttural cries I was talking about earlier. I mean, she's just crying out to God. Now, she was taking the kids to church. She believed in God and all of those things. But out of this, she knew she wouldn't survive if she didn't somehow find a deeper life in Jesus. Like, she wasn't going to make it. And so from that, the trials then drove her to that fellowship with Jesus. So when we look at this scripture, even though Jesus is perfect, okay, he hasn't sinned, he still has a sinful flesh. And part of what the Father is doing is he's teaching obedience to the sinful flesh, and he's bringing the sinful flesh into a place that it is fully about others. And that is where you will find life. I mean, I've shared some of this before, and I'm still on a journey with it. But, Shane was talking about serving. Really in this last year, I feel like the Lord is really beginning to turn my heart towards serving, like in a way that I've never experienced. And I want to tell you, I am so grateful for it. But here's part of the way that God has gotten me to that point. Part of the way He's gotten me to that point is through the trials that we've been through as a church. I wanted to serve, okay? That's why I went into ministry. But in the midst of the service, I wanted some glory for it. And so, if I come in here, and there's 5 of you in here, and I'm supposed to preach to you, rather than thinking about how I can minister to you, I would be thinking the whole time, where's everybody else at? What's their problem? What are they doing? And I would be so mad at that I wouldn't minister to the people right in front of me. And I want to tell you that's a miserable place to be. Because you walk around mad all the time. Because there's always somebody not doing what you want them to do. Right? Yeah. So in the midst of that though, the Lord began to break me down and to show me that it's actually my flesh that's wanting those things. And it's actually my flesh that is not about God, that is in rebellion to God, that I'm being led by, even in the midst of me supposedly serving God. But through the trials, what God has done is I've been able to more and more say, I can't control everybody, but I got 5 people in front of me, and God's called me to minister to them, and that's what I'm going to do. And it's not my job to pick my role in this world. That's up to God. If God wanted to put 1,000 people in front of me, He could do it. This is what He's chosen to do. I'm not God. It's not about me. I'm going to do whatever God calls me to do and puts in front of me. And you know what? I have found life there. Life is not being in front of big crowds. I mean, I've talked about this before, but we were watching a movie recently, and there was this actor in it that's no longer alive, and they had everything going for them. They had talent, they had the looks, they had popularity, they had money. But with all of that, they OD'd on drugs because none of it was bringing them life, and they were trying to find life in drugs. That doesn't bring life. Where do you find life? You find life in Jesus, and it's turning away from the other things. And as you find life in Jesus, Jesus is going to lead you to love and serve people, because that's what He does. And guess what? Jesus in His body was learning it through the Father, in part through what He was going through on the cross. Again, I'm not saying that He sinned. He didn't. But His flesh was constantly in a place to want to go against God. Each of us finds ourselves in that place. But here's what I want you to hear as we kind of bring this to a close and kind of wrap everything up. You cannot escape suffering. You're going to go through things in your life that you say, that's not fair. And you're absolutely right, because you're going to look at somebody else next to you that hasn't, isn't going through it. But I want to tell you, nobody escapes. Maybe it's, your spouse at some point that you have loved and walked with one day walks out. Maybe it's your job that you've given yourself over to and you've sacrificed and you're waiting for the big break and it never comes. Maybe it's the job that you're sacrificing for, and one day it shuts down, and you don't know what to do from that point. Maybe it's an illness. Maybe you've been doing everything right health-wise, but yet you still encounter this illness, and you're like, why, God? Maybe it's an illness that somebody you love encounters, and maybe you're praying for them, you're praying for healing, and they still die. What do you do in the midst of all that? You have a choice, and your choice is life or death, okay? Life is found when you say, God, you're sovereign, and I don't fully understand this, but I'm going to use this pain and suffering as a motive to lean into you, and as you do that, you are going to find life. Because as Jesus leaned into the Father, even though he didn't want to go through the crucifixion and the death and all that came, as he leaned into the Father took him through it, and then guess what? He raised him to life. Now, Paul talks about in other places that he wants to actually share in the suffering of Jesus. And by the way, we are his body, and whenever you go through a suffering, if you are part of the body of Jesus, you are actually sharing in the suffering of the body of Jesus. That's what you're actually doing. Now, as you do that, guess what? It qualifies you. I'm not saying you earn anything. It qualifies you to participate in the resurrection. As we receive the gift of Jesus, it's a free gift. You don't earn it. It's absolutely free. It's like getting married, okay? You don't earn somebody, they choose to give you their love, and you go up and you make these vows, and hopefully you're not paying, for your spouse, but anyways, it's this free gift. But guess what? In order to really experience the love and the fellowship that you were intended to with that spouse, you are going to have to make sacrifices. You're going to have to go through suffering, because that spouse is fleshly just like you, and there's going to be hurts and rejection and all kinds of things. But as you go through that, if you will continue to love them as Christ loved the church, as God has called us to, you will also reap benefits. You will experience life. In the same way, if you go through sufferings and you endure them looking to Jesus, you will experience the resurrection life of Jesus. You will experience it. But there are so many people out there, and part of the reason that God allows all this is to really separate those who are actually following Jesus and those who are not, okay? We can say we believe. James says the demons believe and shudder. Doesn't matter. They're not saved, okay? You can have a head belief, but what is going to separate is when trials come, and I'm not saying we do this perfectly, okay? But when trials come, do I lean into the Lord, or do I say, forget this, this isn't worth it? When I say, Jesus, you're worth it, I don't understand this, but you're all I've got, I'm leaning into you, there is a grace and there is a life that will come to you that you would not experience otherwise. So, maybe you're going through something right now. And again, you've said those things to God. God, this isn't fair. It's not, okay? And is it hard? Yep. I'm not taking away from it. It's extremely hard. But I want you to know it's meant to push you into Jesus so that you would experience more life than you've ever experienced before. That's the purpose of it. And if you're doing good right now, great. Enjoy the moments you've been given. But know this, trials are coming, and don't sit around and worry about it and all that. But it's coming. But just keep your eyes on Jesus, and when it comes, you know what to do. Just when you find yourself getting frustrated, that's that place of like, whoa, wait a minute. Wait, am I walking in the spirit or the flesh right now? Okay, it feels like my flesh is coming out. Let's just stop right now, and I'm going to choose the spirit, because when we walk in the spirit, we have life. Even if you're sitting in a jail cell, we see Peter and them singing, because they're feeling life, they're experiencing life, even if they're in a jail cell. There is nothing this world can do to take that away from you. So my prayer is that I and you would experience the life that Jesus offers, the life that he experienced. It's available for us. But don't take the world's advice. Don't just run from suffering. It's a doorway to the life that you actually desire. Father,